Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar of the Public Safety Webinar Series for 2018 here at Esri. My name is Ryan Langcloss. I'm the Public Safety Industry Team Lead, and it's great to have you with us today in January. To our colleagues on the East Coast, we hope you're bundled up and warm. For those on the West Coast, enjoy some warm weather that's unseasonably warm, and put good wishes onto those on the East Coast as the bomb approaches the Northeast. With me today, I've got Derek Law, who's a technology evangelist on the team. We're going to be talking about achieving situation awareness and specifically using operations dashboard for ArcGIS. So we're going to talk about what's new in the latest release of operations dashboard for ArcGIS that came out in December of 2017. We'll give you some configuration guidance on the dashboards. Derek's going to give us a couple of examples, timely examples, looking at how to build a snow monitoring dashboard for real-time awareness. We're going to share a bit of best practices, things that we've learned from recent events here at Esri as we support those with our disaster response program, just to give you some guidance and things to really consider as you look to build your own dashboards moving out from here. And then, of course, we'll do question and answers to try to answer as many of your questions as we can today during the webinar. So a bit of housekeeping before we get started. Everybody is on mute today, so if you do have questions, we just encourage you to use the chat window and the functionality inside of the GoToWebinar. Just please chat in there, submit the question. We'll try to answer as many of those along the way as we can, both along the way as we go through the demonstrations and presentations, as well as afterwards. So if we don't happen to get to it today in verbal form or through the written form, we'll follow up with you after that. We also have a couple of interactive poll questions, so you'll have an opportunity to kind of give us a sense of where you are with situation awareness and with the operations dashboard application itself. So we're going to ask you a few of those, so when those pop up, you'll be able to give us a bit of feedback so we can tailor the message a bit to you as an audience to make this as useful as possible. And after this event, this recording will be posted online for you to share and reference back. You will receive an email with a link to that. And that includes all of our public safety webinar series. So any of those events that we've done from 2017 and beyond are actually posted on the YouTube channel and accessible from Esri.com at the public safety industry page. We'll also give you a couple links when we get done. So you're going to see some of these in action, some dashboards and configurations of the way that they work, as well as some blogs that we're going to reference that give you some great tips and tricks as you start to look to configure your own. So in the email as we follow up, you'll get specific links to follow up on details. So take notes, look for an email with a little more actions at the end of that when we get done today. So let me just start on our side for the public safety and just give a bit of context to situation awareness. This was one of the most highly attended webinars we've had. A lot of folks signed up, which tells me that there's a great interest in achieving situation awareness inside of organizations. And we realize how difficult that can be for a number of reasons. And so I want to put some context around kind of 4 really trend areas that I see evolving in public safety, and specifically for us in emergency management, that we need to pay attention to, and why this is so important. And I hope that this is helpful context for today. But also, if you're having conversations internally inside of your organization, if you are a GIS practitioner, a GIS professional, and you're having conversations with your operations folks, the executives inside of your agency, I hope that these are trends and topics that you can have conversations around to express how GIS can support achieving situation awareness and some of the tools that you have at your disposal to really help them make better decisions. And the first is something I think that is apparently obvious. I mentioned the bomb cyclone that they're calling it, coming up the East Coast today, hitting the Northeast with snow and severe weather. Recently for us here in Southern California, it was wildfires with the Thomas Fire, one of the largest fires in California state history. And you guys see the picture on the top right of the smoke plumes coming out of the LA basin and north near Ventura with that. And then to the center of the screen where we're talking about flooding, looking back at 2017 with Hurricane Harvey and Irma and Maria, the trio of hurricanes that really hit the southeast in the southern parts of the US and the Texas. What we're seeing is that those events themselves, the hazards that we're exposed to, really are increasing in the frequency, the cost, and the complexity as they really encroach on where people are building closer to these hazards, where the vulnerabilities are increasing as a result of changes in the built environment, the changing in the climate that we see around us, and our aging infrastructure. And I love this quote at the bottom from Craig Fugate, the former FEMA director. He really said, natural hazards only become disasters based on where and how we build and live. And having awareness of where hazards exist, having awareness of where our resources are placed in the community, especially with these, again, more frequent, more complex, and larger scale incidents underway, situation awareness is key for us to achieve. Now, on top of that, not just in the changing world that we live in, there is this ongoing digital transformation around us. I think we all experience it individually. Inside of your house, you have smart thermostats and you have smart meters. Inside of our organizations, we're starting to get sensors that sense everything in the built environment themselves, street sensors and weather sensors, but also from the natural environment. So satellites and the use of drones that are out there now capturing imagery, and even smartphones and people as sensors around us open up this world of real-time data about everything that we experience in our lives. And so situational awareness can take advantage of that, but that also presents a major challenge for us, which is that, as this information becomes available, as these streams are opened up around us, it's very easy to overwhelm decision makers with that amount of information. And so situational awareness is not about just getting access to everything. Situational awareness is about filtering the noise away and finding the thread that really helps a decision maker see what the current situation is, understand what metrics are at risk, and how to make a better decision. So this digital transformation is amazing, but it also presents a key challenge for us. And then the third thing that I think is really part of this conversation is the changes that we have in the GIS infrastructure world. So GIS as a technology is advancing very rapidly, and that means everything on the data front that we just discussed around the digital transformation and opening up sensor networks and the drones that are being used more and more operationally inside of public safety, but also just the infrastructure, right? So the fact that we have web services everywhere now, and this idea of web GIS as a modern GIS infrastructure enabling us to connect multiple data points together where they live and where they work, as well as our citizens and our staff together, it's just a pretty amazing thing. And this innovation that's occurring out there is really expanding the power of GIS beyond where it used to be so difficult to a very simple way of connecting systems together, a very simple way of presenting information. And I think that's at the heart of what situational awareness is about. It is about connecting these sensors, connecting these data streams together, and leveraging this new modern approach of web GIS to present very clean, very simple, focused applications for an end user. And that's kind of where WebGIS, for those of you that attended our webinar series in 2017, we covered WebGIS quite a bit. We talked about it the last two webinars that we did in 2017 coming out of the hurricane, just some lessons learned, how you can connect to authoritative sources within your organization. So incident management systems like WebEOC, for example, or even just basic things like spreadsheets where people are managing resources and information, and exposing that through WebGIS in a map that allows the data to live in these systems where they are managed and operationalized into an environment that can be exposed through a series of applications that are really focused, again, on who the end user is. And I think that's the key in the success of this transformation around us for GIS. It is not about just building one app for everything, and it's not about putting all the data in one app for everything to achieve situational awareness. Situational awareness is about, again, filtering it away, focused on the end user and what the mission is at hand. So if you follow the ESF or the emergency support function model, think about how you could start to build dashboards, right? Applications that support that specific function and the business that they have to do, the mission at hand for that emergency support function, and clear away the rest of the clutter, right? WebGIS supports us and moves us along this pattern here of applications really focused, and you're going to see that today as we kind of go forward and teach you how to build a few of these dashboard applications. Now, the last thing that I think is a trend here is that the role of a GIS analyst is, I think, more complex than ever, and for a couple of reasons, I think that is more complex than ever. So if you're a GIS analyst, I think this may resonate with you. Oftentimes when we talk to organizations, it's one person that's in charge of the GIS, right? That wears the GIS unit leader vest and sits in the EOC and is the tip of the spear when it comes to both collecting and then disseminating information during an incident. And looking back at those other trends we just discussed about increasing complexity of events and the digital transformation, which opens up more data, and the use of WebGIS as a new pattern, it's very difficult to scale and support a rapid flow of data using traditional methods for GIS. And that means, the paper map production, right? It means solely focused on just using one person as kind of the aggregation point and then dissemination point. and having that single point of failure. And it also is the traditional thing that we've seen, which is the all-in-one app, right? So I coined the term trademarked by Ryan here, but the all-in-one app is very challenging, right? And I think that's what we've typically seen as solution by folks, is to put everything into the app and hope that the end user can find the right data set or the right tool inside of that application to get situation awareness, to understand what the decision is at hand. And we've heard repeatedly how that does not work well. So considering that, how do we help GIS analysts who sit in that role, in that position, to actually take advantage of the fact that WebGIS and the digital transformation around us can actually extend the reach of their GIS, using new patterns for WebGIS and this modern architecture to develop situation awareness, so that the staffing level issue is minimized. You're actually distributing the work out to all those end users who really need information, who need to make the decisions and the critical points outside of that single seat inside the organization. So those four trends, right, really for me were highlighted in 2017. So many of you realize here at Esri that we have a program to support organizations in need during disasters, and we call that the Esri Disaster Response Program, or the DRP. And that's really, again, to help with support for software. So people that call us when either they've lost software, they need to scale software during a disaster or an incident. They need support and help figuring out how to configure applications like the operations dashboard that we're going to talk about today, or to deploy things for mobile deployment around damage assessment. Or they need access to data, so real-time feeds of information for weather or hurricane feeds, or snow feeds that are coming in, and predictions that are coming out from the National Weather Service. Or many times maybe just connect to people nearby as a switchboard. So they're looking for somebody in the neighborhood who's doing a very similar thing or wants to share information with somebody else nearby, and they look for help connecting. So that program in 2017 had its busiest year ever at Esri. So think about that for a moment. The history of Esri, 2017 was our busiest year ever for the disaster response program in terms of the number of requests and number of organizations that we helped when their capacity was exceeded. And that just highlights the point that I made earlier about the frequency, the complexity, and the scale of these disasters. And so I thought what might be interesting here as we talk about situation awareness today is to show this transformation, I think, that is going on around us in a couple of real examples. This transformation in GIS, this transformation in the events themselves, and then to tee up really Derek as we kind of take off today looking at operations dashboard. And so I want to start about what we're talking 2018, so almost 17 years ago. So 2001, the World Trade Center. A lot of folks remember this event in detail in many different ways, but here at Esri, we helped over a 3-week period print about 20,000 maps to support everything going on in the operation: situation awareness, decisions that were being made, operations that were ongoing, and the recovery effort around ground zero there. And so what I take away from this is not the event there. You can see the pier at the bottom where the operations center was reestablished. You see the great team of folks on the bottom right who were actually involved in helping set this up and run it, not just from Esri, but from the community at large. But the fact that there are 20,000 maps being printed. And so let that sink in. That is a ton of maps over a 3-week period. And for those of you that work in an operations center, you know what the cadence is like during an event and how hot the printer gets for 8.5 by 11s and 11 by 17s, and the plotters running out and jamming. Those situations are decreasing, right? The amount of maps we're printing and relying on for situation awareness are decreasing for a good reason. They're never going to go away, but there's a transformation underway. And so that next step in that iteration, that transformation, I kind of looked at 2010 and during the British Petroleum oil spill. And for those of you that worked in GIS around this time, this was really when we started to see WebGIS really solidify, right? So looking at the screen here, you're going to see Flex Viewer application. So based on the Flex server technology that was out there at the time, these applications were the first effort to really provide situation awareness in a browser on the web beyond what we used to have for ArcGIS, right? So these were interactive. They were kind of slippy maps. You could pan and zoom really elegantly, and you could turn on layers, and you could access tools to get information about the data. And so this is a great example of how data was being presented to decision makers and the general public to provide awareness around the event itself and what was ongoing for the recovery. But I think what I take away from this is that, as we develop several COPs and you kind of look back on the time in 2010 of what was going on, this really exemplifies the all-in-one apps to me, right? If you look at the bottom right, you see that list of data layers in that bottom left corner that you had to scroll through. Notice the scroll bar, for, if you can tell, scrolls for a long way, right? There's a ton of information out there. And then the toolbars at the top, nested tools that people had to find. And you almost had to teach somebody how to do GIS on the web to use one of these applications. Now, this was amazing kind of a transformation, right? From paper maps in 2001 to web mapping and interactive situational awareness in 2010. But if you kind of go leapfrog into 2017 and why we're here today, I think the technology has come so far that what you're going to see today with Derek and the operations dashboard for ArcGIS is that these applications are much cleaner, much simpler to deploy, and can be configured really quickly. And we're going to do that today in person and kind of use the snow apocalypse occurring on the East Coast to really illustrate that point. So I've got a couple of real examples from 2017 just to show that to you visually. But the city of Miami, Florida, and their public works department after Hurricane Irma coming through, you see the collector application where they had field staff on the left in the field doing road segment surveys for where there was status or blocked roads, partially blocked streets, where there was debris in the road, and what that looks like on the right-hand side for decision makers. So the assistant director who's monitoring his team out in the field on the right, in real time, seeing as they update information, what percentage of street segments are open or closed, what that segment looks like as key metrics that he's following of the recovery effort for the city of Miami. This was done over a matter of hours and a few days to do training to get this up and running. You look at the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, so following just after Hurricane Irma and into Hurricane Maria, still ongoing with the power issues and the recovery issues that will be years in the making. But this is a live data set, and we'll send out some links to these dashboards. But this is from the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. This is shelter status currently being shared directly from Enermetics and their product for WebEOC. So for many of you that use WebEOC and boards within WebEOC to monitor data, this is the visual aspect of that in a dashboard showing what the current status is of number of shelters that are open and the occupancy level of those shelters in general, as well as some interactive nature on the right-hand side. So maybe want to zoom into a specific shelter and check out that information. Again, very clean, very focused on a specific story here and a specific mission with the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. And then not all disasters in 2017 were related to hurricanes and floods, but for those that followed internationally, so Mount Agung and the volcano in Bali that occurred. So this is the live dashboard that's monitoring things like hospital status and school status and so forth. And so you'll see at the bottom kind of their indicators of what the status is for each of those in the impacted area, what the lava flow looks like on the current point, and then the radius that they have for protective measures in place around the volcano. So live situational awareness here in a very clean and simple way. Now they look simple, and that's the point, right? They are conveying really rich information, not just data streams, into a map or an application. And then the last one I think I pulled up for an example actually just came hot off the press this morning. So January 4th blizzard. This is from MEMA, the Mass Emergency Management Agency. Their live dashboard that's publicly available as of this morning showing the EOC activations at a county level, the number of shelters they have open and the capacity, the number of resource requests they have in place, currently being monitored as a result of the storm that's approaching up the East Coast, and then any incidents they have or events going on around transportation. So this was done literally in a matter of hours today. So somebody shared this on an email. I thought it was very timely given the situation we have ongoing. And then certainly as we show what Derek will do here in just a minute about configuring your own snow monitoring dashboard given the events on the East Coast. So that transformation, right, from 2001 to where we are today in January of 2018, this product of ArcGIS, right, what we build here at Esri is exciting to me, right, personally. This operations dashboard, this configurable application that can help you provide better situational awareness, I think is transformational. So a couple of things that I hope you took away from those last few examples of kind of modern dashboards is that, each one of those was focused on a mission and for a specific role in the organization. So as you move forward and you're thinking about that, how do you build applications that support a specific user, a specific mission within the agency? Helps those become more impactful. And they present information, not just data. So you'll see as we configure the elements inside of the dashboard, things like the charts and the wizards you see on the screen here, those elements provide information, right? They're not just showing points or lines on a map anymore. They're actually taking advantage of the attribution in the data to drive those metrics on the screen that help that decision maker understand what it looks like on the right, right? So not everybody looks at a map the same way. Charts and wizards help people kind of filter, again, the noise away and focus on the real points that they need to be addressing here in terms of their decision making. And less is more in the case of each one of these. So less in terms of the number of data layers that they have included, the number of tools that are included, the number of elements that are included. So don't feel like you have to put everything into the dashboard to make it impactful. I would say actually that less is more impactful in many cases when it comes to situational awareness. And you can have multiple dashboards providing, again, for each of the different missions inside of your organization. So with that, that's kind of the intro for today of why we feel like situational awareness is so important, some of the lessons we've learned recently, and I think the application you're going to see today from Derek is truly transformational. I hope you learned today some of the tools and tips for configuring that, and you'll move out on your own. But I'd like to start with just a poll question to kind of help as we transition here to Derek. So I'd like to open up the poll. You're going to see it pop up on the screen. So if you would just take a moment here, and you can select one of the answers here. And what we're asking is just to get a sense of where you are today with Operations Dashboard. So the question is, are you currently using Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS? And if so, let us know which release. So we're using the Windows-based Operations Dashboard with Operations View. So many of you have probably configured things on the desktop for working in an Operations Dashboard, so that may be the answer. How many of you use the web-based Operations Dashboard with dashboard items? Or maybe you're using the Windows-based app, but you're going to be migrating into the web-based app. That's why you're here today, is kind of learn what's new with the web-based application. And also the last one could be perfectly fine. Hey, I'm not currently using Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS at all. I'm here to learn from scratch and get started after today. So take a moment, if you would, and select one of those that's most appropriate for you to give us a sense of where you are today. All right. Let's close the poll and we'll take a look at the results here. There we go, perfect. So quite a few of you are not using Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS, so this is great. I think you're gonna really be excited about what Derek's gonna show in a minute. You're gonna get links after this to follow up where to download, how to launch everything from training to the actual application itself inside of ArcGIS Online. For those of you that are somewhere in the middle of using either the Windows-based, or I like that the green bar in the middle kind of moving up on the dashboard with dashboard items is trending upward. That's an amazing place to be. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Derek Law. Derek, thanks for joining us today, and look forward to kind of seeing how we're going to configure these and some practices you have in place for us from there. Over to you.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Thanks, Ryan, for the handoff. I appreciate it. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. And I'm here to talk about Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS. So thank you guys for joining us. And it's a really exciting product. And as the poll indicated, I'm going to discuss the new next generation Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS app that's really web browser based. And as you can see by the first statement on the slide, the app allows you to monitor assets, events, or activities for at-a-glance decision-making. I mean, and I think it's really appropriate and timely for situational awareness. Basically, it's an app that allows you to assemble various different data sets, and you can display them in a visual way. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the generic concept of a dashboard, but it really can mean many different things to many different people. Now, for our purposes, and with respect to the GIS analyst, we kind of think of a dashboard as really an app that has a spatial component, so a map displaying relevant data, your assets, and then we have some associated gadgets or widgets or elements attached to it to kind of display relevant information for the dashboard. So the idea being Operations Dashboard allows you to do that at-a-glance decision-making to give you key insights about your data. Something to be aware of is that it's a configurable user experience, so you don't have to be a developer to build these dashboards. As you'll see, I'll create one within a few minutes. And it's completely web browser based. Now, for those of you who have used earlier releases of Operations Dashboard, you had to download a desktop app to author an operation view. Well, that's no longer the case. You can author a brand new dashboard completely within a web browser, and it does work on tablets. The app was actually released last November with the recent ArcGIS Online update. So if you have an ArcGIS Online organization, you have access to Operations Dashboard. And we do intend to support ArcGIS Enterprise, specifically with the 10.6 release. So you may be aware that ArcGIS Enterprise 10.6 is scheduled to be released in Q1 of this year. And following that release, within a few weeks, we will have an installer for Operations Dashboard, so you can install it in Portal for ArcGIS 10.6. Now that's only for this release, because their release timeline didn't quite match our release timeline for completion. The other thing to be aware of is that it's built completely on the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. So, Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS. As I mentioned, it's an app that's included with your ArcGIS Online organization, and it leverages a new item type that we call a dashboard that you author within a web browser in the Operations Dashboard app, and it becomes an item within your contents of your organization. What makes it great is that it offers many ready-to-use data visualizations. So many gadgets like a meter or a list or a chart or an indicator are all quickly accessible within the application, and they can be configured to work with your data sets. So you get these basically KPIs, these key performance indicators in your dashboard, so you can have that at-a-glance decision-making capability. We also have some new functionality called actions and selectors, which I'll talk about in the latter part of this seminar. This allows you to build interactive dashboards to allow your end users to have a more interactive user experience. So they can click on a list, for example, and it could select a feature or zoom to a feature in the map display. Or you could click on a feature in the map and then it could update or modify a list or a chart. The thing to be aware of is if you've used the previous release of Operations Dashboard, this is a brand new app that's been completely rebuilt and re-engineered from the ground up. So hopefully you'll like what you see. Now, a quick note about Operations Dashboard. We've identified 3 high-level usage patterns, right? The first one, monitoring and managing your operations or your assets. We support that Internet of Things, real-time data feeds from the Geo Event server extension to give you a common operational picture. And you can see on the slide here in the upper right, we actually have, this is a photo taken by one of our Esri staffers at Cal OES, where they did some emergency management operations, especially for those fires. You can also use Operations Dashboard for event management. Situational awareness is our first bullet here, and is, of course, the whole theme of this webinar. Emergency management, you saw those various examples that Ryan talked about where Operations Dashboard was used to help in response to an event or a disaster. And one that's not as heavily promoted, but we feel is equally important, are executive summaries. So you can actually use Operations Dashboard to build a dashboard to do kind of reporting, if you will, for senior management, maybe senior political officials like the mayor's office or city officials or government officials, to summarize activities or events for them to get a quick high-level view of what's going on in an operation. Now, dashboards can be broadly categorized into 2 general types, if you will, right? The first is interactive, where you make a dashboard application display, but you can make it interactive. So end users that click on one element, such as a list, could have a response in another element. Like maybe they could click on an item in a list and it zooms to the feature in the map. Another option, of course, is to make an unattended dashboard. You saw on the previous slide for Cal OES, we had those various dashboards on those monitors mounted in a room. That might be a dashboard where it's displayed and taking in or consuming real-time data feeds, and it self-updates with refreshes periodically. So the end user doesn't really click or interact with different elements in the dashboard. So you have the choice, and you can use this app to build dashboards that meet both high-level use cases. So how do I get started with Operations Dashboard? As I mentioned, it was recently included with ArcGIS Online. In fact, we've actually had a beta for, I want to say, 6 to 10 months last year, but the first final official release was last December with the recent ArcGIS Online update. And you have a bunch of different options to start working with the app. First, you can use the app launcher. This is a little dialog window that you can access in the upper right-hand corner of your content page. You simply click on it, and it displays this menu, and you can pick Operations Dashboard. Another option, of course, is via the map viewer. So I'm sure many of you have used the ArcGIS Online Map Viewer. You author and create your web map, you symbolize your data, you then save the web map, and then you can hit the share button and choose to create a brand new app. And you'll notice now that there's a brand new third tab called Operations Dashboard, where again, you can quickly and easily configure your own app without having to do any programming. A third option is to access Operations Dashboard through the content page. Again, you can hit the create button. Under the drop-down list, you'll see an app link, and then you'll see Operations Dashboard as a third option. And finally, you can also access Operations Dashboard by going to a Web Maps item page. So here you can see in this screenshot, we're looking at a web map. You can hit Create Web App, and again, Operations Dashboard now appears as a third option. So you can see how the app is closely integrated with your ArcGIS Online organization, and you'll see this same user experience in the Portal for ArcGIS 10.6 release. Now, once I launch the app, the first thing you'll probably see is this new dashboard homepage. And it's a new homepage that allows you to quickly and easily manage and basically edit or do quick modifications of your dashboard items. So you can see on the screen capture, I have 4 different dashboards, and I can do things like launch the dashboard, so launch the app. I could click the pencil to edit the app if I wanted to. I could click the little eye icon to change some of the metadata associated with the dashboard item, like title, add a description, add disclaimers, etc. Or I could delete the app, and you can, of course, search and filter based on, name or date. Now, I want to make a quick mention about the dashboard item. This is a new item type that was introduced in ArcGIS Online last year, and it became official last December with the recent update. A dashboard item type is, you can think of it like a configuration file that tells the dashboard app what elements to load when the app opens the dashboard item. And you can see by the conceptual diagram on the right-hand side here, we have a dashboard item, and we have a dashboard which is composed of 4 different elements. So 4 different pieces that form the dashboard. We have a map, a list item, a serial chart, and a gauge. And you can control and configure which elements exist in a dashboard, how they appear in the layout, and also how they interact. So it's very flexible, very dynamic, and again, we provide this all through a configurable user experience in a web browser. Now, dashboard items work with many different ArcGIS data sources, right? So, most of the data sources that are supported or available in a web map in ArcGIS Online, whatever is configured in the web map can then be consumed and read in Operations Dashboard, and it will work in Operations Dashboard. You can display web services, obviously, data from the Living Atlas, field collection data from apps like Survey123 or Collector for ArcGIS. And you can also consume real-time data feeds as well. Once you create and save that dashboard item, it becomes a new item or thing in your content space in your ArcGIS Online organization. And you can see that by the screenshot in the lower right-hand corner. Something to be aware of is you need to be a level 2 user to author dashboards. And this follows the same pattern that you need to be a level 2 to create and edit new content within your ArcGIS Online organization. And something to be aware of is we don't provide a means to take existing operation views and migrate them or upgrade them to a dashboard. And this is simply because the new dashboard item takes advantage of the new capabilities that are available in the ArcGIS JavaScript API. We don't plan right now to provide a means to migrate the operation views, and we encourage our users to try out to build a brand new dashboard app using the new dashboard item. And if we're missing something, please give us feedback. We want to continue to enhance and improve Operations Dashboard. So, how do I get started to create a new dashboard? Now, this slide here shows one workflow. It's not the only workflow, but you may take this approach where you sign into your ArcGIS Online organization, you can go to the app launcher and you can click the Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS icon. This will take you to the dashboard homepage, and then there's a button that says Create Dashboard. Once you click that button, you will then provide some metadata where you type in the title, you can provide some tags, add a thumbnail, and then you'll start off with a blank canvas. So you have like a blank palette where you can start to create your dashboards. And what you want to do then is click the plus sign in the upper right part of the UI, and in the drop down, you would pick an element that you want to add. Now you can add any element you want, but typically you would start with a map because the map will contain data layers that you can then reset your elements to work with. And you can pick from any web map that you have access to in your organization. The point I want to emphasize is that it's tightly integrated with your ArcGIS Online organization. So you can, just like any other configurable app, you can access web maps that you've authored or that you have access to or that have been shared with you. And Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS provides you with a what you see is what you get user experience. And you can start to create and add your elements, and you can configure their different properties, lay them out, and then you can configure interactivity. And I'll demo this for you. Now, a quick note about the different elements that you can add. You can see here we have many different types of elements. We have a header bar, so you can title and customize your app. We have the map, obviously. We have a left panel, which there's no screenshot for, but it allows you to store selectors. You can have indicator elements or meters, map legends, serial charts, and pie charts and gauges. So all of these things that allow you to display and show your data in an interactive way, and they read the data content from the web map. Now I've done enough PowerPoint slides. Let's go to a demo. So you should all be able to see the Firefox web browser now, and I actually have a snowplow dashboard. As Ryan mentioned, with the recent cyclone winter storm on the East Coast, we thought it was appropriate to kind of show or build a little app that allows you to show your snowplows. So this is situational awareness, and what this dashboard does is actually you can see that the snowplows are moving in the map display, and we have a list of various reported issues on the right-hand side. We have also an indicator element that shows you the total number of customer issues that need to be addressed. And in the lower left, we have a pie chart showing you the different types of issues that customers are reporting. What I'm going to do next is actually show you how to quickly and easily build this dashboard from scratch inside ArcGIS Online. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start with my ArcGIS Online organization. You can see here I'm on the content page, and I have all my different contents here. As I mentioned, if I wanted to, I could activate Operations Dashboard by clicking the Create button. And if I go to App, you can see I have one option here, using Operations Dashboard. Another option is I could use the App Launcher, and I can go to the Operations Dashboard app this way, where I can click on it, and then I can trigger and view my dashboard homepage. And here you can see I have my various dashboards built. But for the purposes of this demo, what I'm going to do is actually go back to my map display. So I'm going to start where many of you, I feel, will start, and this is another common workflow. I have my web map. In this case, I'm showing you a web map of snowplows that are moving in southern Salt Lake City. And you can see in my legend, I have my complaints as a data layer, the plows themselves, the tracks of the plows, status of the streets. And I've actually added 2 additional data layers from the Living Atlas, one of the National Weather Service forecast, and the other for recent radar imagery. So what I want to do is, if I want to start working with Operations Dashboard, is simply save the map, and I can save the map. Then what I will do is I will hit Share. And again, this is showing the third option on how to activate Operations Dashboard. I choose Create a Web App, and now I can click on the Operations Dashboard tab. And I'm going to call this Salt Lake City Snowplows Dashboard. And I'll simply click Done. And now it activates the Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS app inside ArcGIS Online. And as you can see, in this case, I didn't start with a blank canvas because I already had the web map displayed in my map viewer. And you can see here the map is working, it's responding to the data feeds. And I want to draw your attention to the upper left-hand corner. So for every single element, in this case I have the map element, I can click on this button and hit Configure. And here's where I can start to configure various properties for that element. Now I have the default name of map, but I might want to change this to snowplow map. And then I can add a title if I wanted to. And if I scroll down, you can see I have various different map tools that I have the option to enable or disable. I want to leave the pop-ups working that were configured in the web map. Maybe I want to activate the default extent and bookmarks. I'll maybe want to allow my end users to configure layer visibility as well as change the base map and hit zoom in or zoom out. Then I hit done. Notice now, once I've made those changes, you can see they get applied real time immediately after I configure that element. So I can see I have my zoom in, zoom out button in the lower right-hand corner. I have my base map switcher. I can alter layer visibility if I wanted to by clicking this button here. But now I want to start to build a dashboard, right? So something that might be useful in this dashboard is to see a list of all the different customer issues that have arisen from the recent snowfall. So I click this plus sign, and I'm going to click my list element. And the first thing it asks me is, okay, what is the data source for that element? I will choose complaints. And now you'll see I have my configuration options for that list element. Notice on the left-hand side, I have various properties, the data, the list, the general. And on the right-hand side, I actually have a real preview of how my element will appear in my dashboard. Now I'm referencing my complaints data layer. I could apply a filter if I want to, or choose how many features are displayed and also set a sort. I'll leave that at the default and go to the list. And here is where I can configure the contents of my list element. For example, I have various different kind of text formatting options, but I'll choose and type in description as my text. And now from this little click list, I'll choose the different attributes that are available in my complaints layer. So I'll choose description here. Notice as I make my changes, I have a preview of what is going to appear in my list element. Another thing I will add is customer name. And again, I'll choose a field. I'll choose the customer name. And the last thing I may want to add is probably the date, right? So submission date. That way, I have an idea of when that customer made the complaint or called to have their issue told to us. So I'll choose date submitted. Then again, you can see this preview. And just for the sake of argument, what I'll do is I'll highlight the submission date text and I'll make it bold and I'll just make it red. So that way it draws attention to that important information. Now again, I could format it if I want to further by adding italics, etc. I could add a hyperlink or add an image if I wanted to. I could choose to have no symbol or a symbol. And I can also control if I want the selectability in the list. I want to be able to select one feature or multiple, but I'll leave the default. Finally, I have this general property. And here, again, I can rename the element, or in this case, I will label this as reported issues. I have a little title. I'm going to format this again and make it bold, maybe draw and make it a header. I'll center it and I'll change the font color. Now again, I have many different options. I don't have time to go through them all, but I could also change the background, add a description. I'll hit done for now. Notice here I have my list element and I can resize it as I like. So here's, again, quickly and easily, I've added an element. Now I'm seeing an element of all the different customer issues. It might be nice to see the different types of issues. So, break it up by type so I have an idea, right? So again, I will add another element. I'll click the plus sign. I'll go to pie chart. And again, I'll click my complaints layer. And here I can start to show how the data will appear. I could apply a filter, but I won't. And I have 3 different options on how I want to display my data. Do I want to grab all the features in my layer, maybe based on grouped values or fields? I will choose grouped values and I'll display the description field. And you can see once I've done that, I have this pie chart showing a breakdown of all my different complaint issues. Now I could add a statistic, but I won't. I could sort it, but I won't. I could further format the chart, so I could change the text color. Maybe I'll make it blue. I could change my hover text. Right now it's on, but as you can see, it's on. Or I could remove it so it's not there, but I'll leave it on. And I can also add precision control for my label offsets, right? Do I want to add an angle? Maybe I don't want a pie chart and I want a donut chart for whatever my personal preference. And I could optionally add a legend. For example, at the bottom, this gives me the specific number of issue breakdown, or on the side, but it looks really complicated, so I'll hide it. And then I can also control the slices. Now we've assigned a default color palette, but you could absolutely assign your own color palette if you want to. Maybe black ice is really important, so I could change the color and make it red. So I have some importance there. I could also rename my labels, right? In this case, the default value was my mailbox was hit, but I could change this to hit mailbox. And again, as I hit this refresh, it updates. And again, you can modify various different properties about the chart. And I could, again, have my general settings for my pie chart. So again, on this case, I'll have a title and I'll call this types of issues. I will bold it, make it a heading, and also center it and make it blue. And I'll hit done. So again, you see I have my pie chart element, and now what I can do, by default, it always gets added to the right-hand side, but I can click in the upper left-hand corner and drag the item to reposition it. So I can alter my layout. In this case, maybe I want to put it, notice as I hover over the list element, I have these 4 placement boxes, and maybe I'll put it underneath my list. And again, I can resize it. So it's pretty interactive, pretty dynamic. Now, I'm going to add a couple of other elements, right? Maybe I want to add that indicator. So if someone's walking by the dashboard, they can quickly tell, well, how many total issues were reported. So again, I'll click the plus sign, go to indicator. I'll choose my complaints layer. And right away, you can see we have 24. I'm going to go to my indicator properties, and I'm going to make this text actually red. That way, it draws attention to the dashboard to know that we have 24, I'll say reported issues as text, and again, I'll make it red. And something that's kind of cool is you can also add an icon. So right now we have none, but I may want to add an icon to the left or the right. And now we have a little gallery for us to add various icons. Now these are the ones by default. You can certainly add your own custom icon if you want to. I'll choose this exclamation point. And again, just to make it all uniform, I will make it red. And of course, I could add general property information, but I want to format this to be simple, and I'll hit done. And now I have my indicator. Now, a couple of things here I want to highlight is with respect to the layout. Now, what I could do is, obviously it doesn't look very nice here. I can click on this and actually drag it down. And as I hover over my pie chart, notice if I put it over the center, I can stack my elements. Here now you can see I've made this dashboard interactive. Notice in the lower left-hand corner, I have my pie chart element, or I could click the tab and now view my indicator element. So I have that flexibility. Now, maybe I don't want to have to tab through the different elements, so I can once again click on this, drag it, and actually put it on top of my pie chart. So again, very interactive. You can see my list element is pretty cramped, so I'm going to take this and actually drag it and reposition it to the right of my map display. And now I'll resize everything. So now I have a nicer visualization of my data content, as you can tell. Now, something I also want to add is I may want to add a header, right? So I want to give this dashboard a title. Remember, we're in edit mode, so what you see at the very top here, this is not part of the actual app, so I'll click the plus sign, add the header. And again, I'll type in the title, Salt Lake City snowplow dashboard. And I can also add some custom elements. So what I'm going to do right now is just move my cursor and copy a URL address for a custom logo. And I'm also going to copy a hyperlink for that logo. And again, I have various properties where I can add a custom background image or center it. Maybe I'll make it large and I'll hit done. And now we have my header element. So this is pretty cool. This is a dashboard you saw within the span of a few minutes. I quickly and easily made a custom dashboard. And now I can do things like click on that logo to activate my, to go to my public works page for the city of Salt Lake if I want to. And I can reposition my dashboard elements at any time. But something I want to highlight is, notice each element has this little kind of four-cornered arrow icon. What I can do is actually click on it so I can expand that element. So if it's a bit cramped, I could expand it to view it. And again, my hover text works, as you can see. And if I want to simply click it to minimize it. So we've made it interactive. So you saw quickly and easily how I could make this dashboard. Right now, I've set no actions nor selectors, so this could be an unattended dashboard that's displayed on the wall. But let me go back to my PowerPoint, and I'm going to quickly explain how I can also enable dashboard interactivity. Now, dashboard elements can be associated with each other through this thing called actions and selectors. Well, what do I mean by that? You can see on the slide here, this is a conceptual diagram. I have two elements, element 1 and element 2. What I could do is have an event occur on element 1. Maybe I select a feature, maybe I change a map extent. That can cause an action to occur on a different element. So we have these two things called a source element and a target element. The source element is where the event occurs upon, which triggers an action, and that action is executed by the target element. This allows me to have various different interactions within my dashboard. Now, this is the conceptual slide, and I know it might seem a bit abstract, so I have a couple of tangible examples. For example, I could set an action on my map display. So when I zoom in or zoom out for my map extent of my map element, it could update the types of issues that appear in my pie chart. And I'm going to configure this for you in my next demo. Another action might be, well, let me select an item in my list. I could select one of those customer issues, and it flashes or highlights in the map. I could alternatively set a zoom to action. It really depends. Finally, I want to explain this idea of a selector. A selector is actually a user interface control. So it's usually a button or a drop-down. In this case, you can see by the screenshot, I have this drop-down list, so a drop-down selector where I can pick a truck and then zoom to that truck in my map display. And you can have many different types of selectors based on category data, numerical data, or by dates. But let's take a look back to my dashboard. So again, I'm in Firefox, and you can see I'm editing my dashboard. And if I want to configure some of these behaviors, what can I do? Well, I'm going to configure my header. So again, I go to the upper left. I click on Add Category Selector. Notice now I have different types of selectors. And here is where I can add this UI control to trigger an interaction. I'm going to have a drop-down list. I'm going to choose my various features, and I'm going to pick from my snowplows. And what I want to do is, you can see now in my preview, I have a drop-down list showing all my various snowplows. Now, you can see the values aren't really sorted, so that's kind of annoying. I want to sort my trucks based on the sending value. Now, when I click on the drop-down, you can see, whoops, I'm going to choose based on vehicle name, descending or descending. Subject ID. Oh, that's, let me blow this away. So hang on, I'm going to pick drop down, features, plows layer. I'm going to add a sort and choose ascending. And now what I'm going to do is also add a none option. So notice now I have my none and my trucks. There we go. So when someone clicks one of the vehicles in my drop-down, I'm going to have an action, which is when the selection changes, I'm going to zoom to the truck in my snowplow map, and I'll hit done. Notice now in my dashboard, I have this selector drop-down. Right now I have none, so I can see all my trucks, but if I were to click one of the trucks, like truck number 3, the event was the selection and the action was zooming into truck 3. The same thing could happen for truck number 6. Or if I want to go back to my initial extent, I could click on none and I go back to my full map extent. So that's one interactivity that I could set. Another one is the lists. Here again, I will go to the upper left. I will configure my action. And in this case, when the selection changes, I want to flash or display the selected item in my map. So again, I hit done. Now notice when I click on something in my list, it flashes in the map display, right? So again, that interactivity. And finally, the last interaction that I want to set is in the map. So again, I'm going to go and configure an action. In this case, for my, whoops, I clicked the wrong configure. I want to configure an action. In this case, when the map extent changes, I'm going to apply a filter to my pie chart. And again, I hit done. Notice now as I zoom in, the pie chart values update and I get different totals. So this is pretty powerful. And again, we support many different workflows, many different use cases. It's really up to you on how you want to set up your interactions. Lastly, we set up elements, we set up interactions. You see this nice white dashboard because we're talking about snow, but I wanted to also draw your attention to the fact that you can also change the theme. So if you wanted to, you could make your entire dashboard black, if you will. And again, right now, maybe the map isn't quite appropriate for the display, so I can go to my base map switcher and I can actually choose my dark gray canvas map. And you can see now I have my custom dashboard. And of course, I can modify any elements, and when I'm done, I simply hit save. This now becomes a new dashboard item in my organization. So I'm going to go to my content page. You can see we have our SLC snowplows dashboard, and if I go to my dashboard homepage, you can see again I have this new element, and I can add a thumbnail, etc. So I showed you how quickly and easily it is to build a new dashboard. What I want to highlight to you is the fact that we actually have a blog where you can try some dashboards. The operations dashboard team has built some amazing demos. We have one with snowplows, and here you can see some interactivity where you can click on the header to filter for the trucks based on a certain amount of time and also the truck speed. We have a water quality dashboard, which again shows different chemical levels. And we also have a gorgeous Philadelphia simulated crime demo showing different crime levels. If you want to learn more, obviously we have the help and operations dashboard, which again is very comprehensive. It talks about the different elements. I want to draw your attention to the serial chart element, where again you can have many advanced charting capabilities. We don't have time to demo all of that. And finally, if you want to learn more about the product, you can go to the operations dashboard for ArcGIS product page on Esri.com. And as Ryan mentioned, we'll have links to all of this in the follow-up email. So let me turn that back to the slides, and I'll pass it back to you, Ryan.
Excellent. Thank you, Derek. I appreciate that. Great demonstration, I think, of some of the interactive nature, some of the features that are available in the new web-based version of ArcGIS, Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS. So take some time to digest what you saw today, right? I'm curious to know, now we're going to kind of leave you with a final poll question. We're going to take a look at some of the questions that are also input in the system. But I'm curious to know, after what you've seen today, what you've learned based on kind of the first question we asked you, how many of you are actually planning to use Operations Dashboard in the future? And so kind of looking for timeframes here in the next 1 to 6 months, maybe 6 to 12 months, or no plans at this time. This will help us kind of determine how we can also provide additional training, additional activities to kind of help you along the way over the next 12 months. So if you would take a moment just to give us a sense of where you think you might be in the use of Operations Dashboard to provide situational awareness for your organization, and we'll tailor some activities in the future based on that. So I'll give you just a second to answer the question. All right, so there we go. So perfect. So 1 to 6 months. So look for more coming soon. Derek mentioned some of the resources. I'll put these up on the screen, but know that you'll have access to these coming in an email. But for those that are referencing back and watching this video again to learn some of the tips and the tricks, maybe you've explored the dashboard examples that we will send out as well, and you want to figure out how to do one of those elements again, or how to get the interactive nature between elements in place again. Know that there's a couple of things. The blog that Derek referenced is here at the front end, talks about what's new from the December 2017 release. There's also an additional live training seminar coming up on January 25th, so real-time decision-making with Operations Dashboard for ArcGIS. So I would encourage you, if you want to kind of take another level down into this technology, to attend that webinar and training seminar on the 25th. And then there's the GeoNet blog about configuring your first dashboard. So if you are getting started, which a lot of you answered early on that you're new to Operations Dashboard, I would encourage you to take out some time in the schedule to look at the GeoNet blog on the community site that we list below. That'll really help you get up and running pretty quickly. And then from there, kind of next steps as we move forward. So, questions today, we've answered a ton of those throughout the webinar here on the screen. I've got a couple that we want to take some time to answer just for clarification here. And then I also want to make sure that you have our contact information. So for Derek and myself, if you have questions about how to apply it in public safety, how to do situational awareness better, if you want to just brainstorm about how to implement that, feel free to reach out to me. If you have questions about the product side and about the operations dashboard for ArcGIS, or feedback about elements and tools as Derek just offered, his contact information is on the screen from that. And then know that we have our next webinar coming up in March for the Emergency Management Webinar Series. So look for that invitation in your inbox. Look forward to having you in the future with us. So just for that, I'm going to take just a second here because there are a few questions here that came up multiple times. And Derek, you covered these actually in your presentation, but I just want to take a moment to highlight these again for everybody. So the first is, when will ArcGIS Enterprise, the portal for ArcGIS component, support the new operations dashboard? And then there was a kind of a follow-up that kind of dovetailed into that, which is, does the operations dashboard for ArcGIS work with pre-10.6 portal for ArcGIS, so people that are using ArcGIS Enterprise? So if you could maybe just reiterate those 2 points again, I think that would be helpful for a lot of folks.
Sure, thanks, Ryan. So as I mentioned, portal for ArcGIS 10.6 is included with ArcGIS Enterprise, and that's planned to be released in Q1 of this year. I almost want to say later this month. Unfortunately, we didn't complete our development in time for the Enterprise 10.6 release. So for 10.6, you will have to download an installer. It's one time only for 10.6 to enable Operations Dashboard in Portal for ArcGIS 10.6. Now, because it uses the new dashboard item type, unfortunately, we have no plans to enable Operations Dashboard, the new one, for earlier releases of Portal for ArcGIS because pre-10.6 Portal for ArcGIS instances won't have the new dashboard item type.
Excellent, thank you, Derek. And then there was one that came up several times as well of related tables. I was going to say related to related tables, but the redundancy was terrible. So maybe speak to a minute about using related tables inside of Operations Dashboard. I know the Windows-based application, some questions about that, and as we look to the new application, any guidance or what the roadmap might look like for using related tables and accessing that inside of a dashboard?
That's a great question. I believe that you can view related tables via the pop-up as you would in a web map, but I will need to follow up on the specifics on what exactly is our level of related table support. So I will definitely follow up and have that answer in the email.
Excellent, thank you, Derek. All right, and I think we've answered most of the questions individually in between there, but those are the kind of common ones that kept reoccurring throughout the event itself. So I just want to take a moment and say, Derek, thank you for taking the time today to show us the new operations dashboard for ArcGIS. And to all of you on the phone, thanks for attending our first webinar of 2018. Thanks for being with us for the next the hour that we had together. Good luck in the future. Let us know how we can help you along the way, and we'll see you in March for the next webinar and continue this journey. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.